Good morning, everyone,
Oh, sorry.
and welcome.
Hey, sorry, my apologies.
That is okay. Welcome to our General Finance Committee meeting in June 2024. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that is there a supplementary agenda? I don't think there is there? No, there's no supplementary agenda. And would like to also note that we have members of committee, with the exception of Councillor Nishikawa, who I believe will be joining us in a little bit. As well, members of our senior staff beside me, CAO and our clerk, deputy clerk, joining us here today for today's meeting. At this point, I would like to ask committee members if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Councillor Burry?
Item 10B, Muskoka Lakes Museum. I'm the treasurer.
Okay, thank you. And you've submitted your form?
I submitted my form
Thank
before
you.
the meeting. I get a gold star.
A gold star. Good work. Thank you very much. With that, I am going to move on to item 4A, which is an invited presentation. Renee Recoskie from the district is joining us, but in order to actually do this presentation, she's actually here for questions. I'm going to invite Chriselle up to talk to item 8A.
Thank you, Chair Mazan, and good morning, committee. Just before I get into my report, I just want to introduce committee to Renee Recoskie. She is the Director of Waste Management and Environmental Services from the District Municipality of Muskoka. She's sitting here. She is available today and the event committee has any questions regarding my report, which is item number 8A. So the township has received applications from the District Municipality of Muskoka to transfer certain portions of township-owned original road allowance and a township-owned property to them. The district, who looks after all waste management powers of all Muskoka lower-tier municipalities, is in the process of identifying the extent of the waste footprint of the former Windermere landfill site under the direction of the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation, and Parks. Upon doing so, the district has discovered that the waste footprint falls upon township lands. In order to facilitate the requirements of the ministry, complete proper maintenance, annual inspection, and access to the site, the district has requested the township's cooperation in conveying the identified lands. Staff have reviewed the district's requests and are recommending approval as they meet the intent of the waste management approach and responsibilities in Muskoka and would further remove any associated liability from the township. And with that said, I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Committee, are there any questions? Okay, I'm seeing none. I will read the resolution then. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that the original road allowance application ORA-01-24 amended and that land disposition application land 01-24 District Municipality of Muskoka be approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, a corresponding draft numbered reference plan of survey shall be prepared and provided to the clerk for review within 1 year of the date of this conditional approval. 2, that the township be in receipt of the following from the acting solicitor. 1, confirmation that public notice of the proposed dispositions were published pursuant to township policy C-LS-06. 2, confirmation from applicable agencies that they have no concerns with the proposed dispositions. 3, a road closing bylaw, a declaration of surplus resolution for the portions of original road allowance, and any related necessary documentation to effect the disposition of the portions of original road allowance. And 4, a disposition of land bylaw, a declaration of surplus resolution for the property and any related necessary documentation to effect the disposition of land. And the 3rd, payment of any applicable fees, including the solicitor's time and disbursements. That was a lengthy one for first thing in the morning for general and finance. So any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is carried. Thank you for coming today, Mr. That was easy. Okay. Moving on now to our invited delegation or our delegations. We have two from the Save South Muskoka Hospital Committee. And together they do have 10 minutes. There's two different delegations, but I understand that their presentation, the two of them are working on together. So our clerk will be managing the time, and similar to every other delegation, once they are complete, committee, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. As noted, and as we discussed later on in today's agenda, if there is a discussion that we would like to have as committee, that is the time we will have the discussion. So with that, I'd like to invite Ms. Coates and Mr. Vanderstelt to the podium.
Yeah.
Hello, there
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Chair Mazan and committee. Thank you for giving us the time to make a presentation today. My name is Jill Coates of Milford Bay, and I wish to introduce my colleague, Tony Vanderstelt of the Brandy Lake community. We are both permanent year-round residents of the township of Muskoka Lakes. We represent a group called Save South Muskoka Hospital Committee. We are here today to express our concern about the revised model for the hospital redevelopment proposed by Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare, which we will now refer to as MAHC. Our organization feels that the newly revised model for the hospitals does not meet the health needs nor the well-being of South Muskokans, and specifically those of the township of Muskoka Lakes. The process that led to this revised model has not been transparent, and at the very least has been troublesome. We politely request that you give some thought as to what we have to say today. Muskoka Lakes residents deserve better. At this point, I will pass the baton over to Tony to give you further information.
Thanks, Jill, and thank you for the time today. We could have the first slide, it'd be great. So our committee is an incorporated not-for-profit grassroots organization that was formed after the release of the latest report with membership from all the municipalities, throughout South Muskoka. We've come together to just advocate for equitable access to acute services across the district, not just for the short term, for the long term. I'm not going to go through every point because I'm sure you guys have, you've had this and have had a chance to leave it. We just, again, we believe the model is fundamentally flawed. The process has been fundamentally flawed, and we're just trying to get the word out to the different stakeholders involved. We've been to the district already. We're going to Bracebridge and Gravenhurst, and here we are today in Muskoka Lakes. So again, our concern is about the process and where it's going from here. Next slide, please. So it's we just want to recognize it's $1 billion being spent here in Muskoka, and a large chunk of that through the local portion comes from Muskoka Lakes. So again, we're trying to get awareness to how are we using our tax money best to service all of Muskoka, and of course our concerns are for South Muskoka. The way the model has come out, we want that hospital here for the long term. And again, we don't feel it meets the criteria of equal and equitable access for all of Muskoka. Yeah, with studies from the doctors, there's negative patient outcome consequences that they feel will come out of it. And again, we're bringing awareness to that. Go ahead, thanks. So just a bit of history. I'm sure most of you know about it, but in late December and early January, MAHC came out with its latest model. There's some of the key things: an increase in Huntsville and a decrease in Bracebridge. At that time, there was no obstetric program in Bracebridge, day surgeries and an ER in Bracebridge, and everything else was up in Huntsville. You know, started with their public meetings. One was here, or a number in Bracebridge and throughout the area. Thousands of people let it know that just wasn't what the public felt was a good thing to do, both in person and online. Next slide, please. So these are taken off MAHC site. Sorry, I don't have the date that they were pulled off, but there's just some stats as to what they proposed. You can go to the next one. You guys have got them there in electric. I don't want to go through every detail. Next one, please. So Pursuant to that, 47 Muskoka physicians, both active and retired, you know, drawing on some of that expertise of the experience that they had. They had grave concerns, not some concerns, they had grave concerns. The reduced beds would increase in transfer. You recall the first proposal was 18 beds. So anything after 72 hours, the patient would be moved up to Huntsville. There was no plan about how that was going to work. You know, they were going to work on that transportation. And the doctors were very concerned about, you know, transporting patients results in negative outcomes. Reducing access about recruitment. There's no way we were going to be able to keep doctors, entice doctors to come here. They felt that was very detrimental to that. And the NOSM, the Northern Ontario School of Medicine, that would be in jeopardy in a smaller service. And the obstetric service means everybody would have to, in order to have their child, would have to go up to Huntsville, where, you know, as we start to get further this way, that becomes very problematic. And also the impact that it has on families with visitation and support for those people that are in the hospital. So in February, that group proposed a different model with 90 beds in Bracebridge, 50 in Huntsville. They had some research, which is all backed up, that I'd be happy to share later. I didn't want to make all the inclusions too long in an email. Next slide, please. So they met twice with senior management, one in person and one ended up in Zoom. They did get some leeway. It went up to 36 beds, which would put that 72 hours in a hospital up to 6 days. They moved that up to, and then you would be transported up to Huntsville. And we got 1 obstetric beds, but it's still not enough. You know, our committee's there to support the doctors and lean on their expertise. And the general feeling from there is it's not enough long term. We've made many requests for information. We've been met with long timelines and significant financial. We'd have to pay for the information. We've just been asking for financial information and try to understand how it works. And that really hasn't been forthcoming. So we make 2 motions. Our committee motion suggestions. Again, this is about awareness to make sure everybody is thinking about it. Again, a significant financial implications for your investment here from Muskoka Lakes as part of that local share. That the 36 bed still doesn't work, and the care close to home, which is a model that is still in flux, even with the doctors as they try to work back and forth. But that's what we're leaning on. Next slide, please. Thanks. So every day, you know, this is a stat from the other day. You can check their census report every day. The hospital is constantly operating over capacity. It's a daily occurrence. Both here and in Huntsville, but also more in Bracebridge. So we do recognize the model splits activities between the sites. So it is, again, up to 6 days, as I said before. But as we look at population numbers and projections, even that the district report came out with a week or so ago, that the numbers just don't work. They don't work now, and in the future, they don't work. If you look at the population increases, nobody knows where that will fall. Obviously, they don't have crystal balls. But, you know, 60% is in South Muskoka now. And if that keeps going, the numbers are just going to get worse. So, again, the districts, the latest statistics from the district were 25,000 in the district in the next 25 years. That's a significant increase in capacity that we don't feel is there. Thank you. So that's just a summary of how it went. The current numbers after the first proposal. The first proposal back from the doctors, that's the MD proposal. And then the second one after a bit of working is still at 36. Go ahead, please. So we just want MAC to take the time and get it right. And we're urging this council to have some input into that, to ask some questions around that, to make sure everything is being thought through in an open and transparent way. We need to increase that 36 and the service allocation. Duplication is costly, and they're trying to eliminate that. But we believe there's ways in between. Again, we talk about the open dialogue, and again, as this council works with district council and the other stakeholders, the other townships, there needs to be a lot of cooperation amongst it and communication that we can effectively support the needs of South Muskoka. So this is a quote directly out of the minutes of the District of Muskoka Committee of the Whole in October. So October of 23, the redevelopments, once approved, will result in additional beds at each site. That is clearly not what came out only 2.5 short months later, that a drastic reversal of that proposal came into effect. So that's what we're questioning and trying to get to the bottom of and trying to change. And that's what I have here. Jill?
I'll just wrap up and say in closing, we'd like to thank you for your time today, and we want the residents of Muskoka Lakes Township to have the medical services that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you both. So committee, are there any questions? Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, I have a few questions and trust me, they are questions because I don't understand everything that's being presented here. Just a couple of really easy ones. You mentioned 3 municipalities. You draw membership from 3 South Muskoka municipalities. I assume that's Gravenhurst, Bracebridge, and Township of Muskoka Lakes. Does that include Lake of Bays?
The offers have been made.
But right now the focus is on those 3. I just want to make sure I know which
Correct.
3 we're talking about. Okay,
South Muskoka.
that's fair. Okay.
They would be the ones impacted by the hospital more than.
Yeah, I understand that. That's good. The second thing, I think the history is good to know in terms of what was offered up in January, but the reality is we're dealing with different numbers now. Frankly, I think we're dealing with numbers that are doubled in terms of acute care availability. So are we at 18? I can see that from your presentation, 18 is not enough, but I'm not sure that I saw in here what you consider to be the right number.
Well, we continue to work with that in discussions with MAC. There seems to be in the medical thing, a pod of 18 seems to be the magic number with the nurses, the beds, all that. So we try to work in 18s. I believe the latest round they're looking at is 60. Which is 54 plus some. Again, I'm not the medical expert on it. It's what kind of beds, ALC beds, emergency beds. But I think that currently it sits at 36 after the revision from 18. And I believe the current push is for 60.
Okay. And the last question from me is, I certainly appreciate the work you're doing on the hospital specifically, but in terms of healthcare availability in the 3 municipalities, are you focused at all on 2 issues, long-term care and frontline community medicine? Because I think a large part of the problem that I see that you're presenting here comes from the fact that there's too many people in the hospital that shouldn't be in the hospital. And I'm just curious to know, have you devoted time to try to understand or promote a different approach to long-term care?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've struck a subcommittee and brought on some other healthcare professionals. I just read the report this morning. They met just a couple of days ago. There are 2 reports going out specifically to that. 20 to 25% of the beds are ALC beds. We recognize that's a problem, and we're working with the district and hopefully with not a lot of that is there's not a lot of cross communication that way within this current system from the ALC end. Beds are cheaper. I was quoted a number of $200,000 a bed to build for ALC long term and $2 million for hospital. We agree. There should be more of that where we are, given the information that we have and the process that we have. As that's not part of the discussion, we are making that part. There's a very detailed report coming out, and the paramedicine has been brought up. It is somewhere in this MAC proposal. There's no details around that because again, paramedicine is a district, partially district funded. It's all about funding streams as well. But we are definitely working. It's a high priority. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Burry.
Thank you. And through you, I'm glad to actually have heard a little bit about alternate level of care. It didn't come until the end. It wasn't in your presentation, which I would then suggest is not a balanced presentation if we're trying to inform people. Alternate level of care has been a problem at Muskoka Algonquin Healthcare before the 2 hospitals merged. In my 6 years as chair of the finance committee, it was a big problem and we couldn't fix it. But I don't think that means that we build a hospital to contain alternate level of care patients when there are other options, which means maybe we are getting to the right kind of hospital and that we have to push to get the alternate level of care and get mommy and daddy out of the hospital. So the average
Councillor
stay.
Burry, just want to make sure that we're at questions right now,
Well,
please.
so my question is
I know there needs to be a bit of preamble.
if we're pitching the public that it's not the appropriate hospital when factually that may not be correct. As a councillor and someone that voted against this at district, one of two I might add, because I didn't think some of it was the right way to go about it. I mean, hip surgery is now day surgery. You don't need an acute care bed unless there's a problem. So there's all kinds of pieces here that we can't just look at the South Muskoka Hospital in isolation, I don't think. I think we need to look at Muskoka Algonquin healthcare as a whole, as a totality. As the mayor has pointed out, we need to look at where is alternate level of care and how do we build that properly? How do we get primary care?
So the reason I'm asking if there's a question, we are going to have a chance later in today's agenda to have this further conversation.
Well, I just thought I'd
discussion.
share that I didn't think that it was a balanced education.
Okay, so that's.
So may I
that's a
suggest
comment.
with a question, because I'll raise my voice at the end. If you're trying to educate, it needs to be a more balanced playing field. And I think you need to point out the problem is with the province, the problem is with other jurisdictions, but that doesn't mean we build a hospital at 2 million a bed, which if we use the kinds of dollars that get spread around here, it's going to be way more than that because we can't even build
Is the
a long-term
inflection coming?
care.
The inflection.
The inflection is coming. So would you please
Thank you.
consider altering your deck to speak about alternate level of care and some of the obstacles that you're having as a special interest group that I commend for doing what you're doing.
So.
Sorry, I know.
Could I respond? Or
Yes, the question I think is, could you include?
could I change the proposal?
Or could you include the discussion on
Sure.
ALC beds within your deck? I think it was the question at the end, but.
So thank you for that. As answered in the previous question, we have two committees that are different parts of that. The long-term care is a big part. To go back to why it's not in this proposal, this presentation is a response to the proposal that came forward. There is no major portion of ALC in MAHC's proposal. And the beds that are being asked for in Bracebridge, they are not all ALC beds. I don't have the specific breakdown, so I could actually add that. But we recognize ALC is a huge part of this. We recognize it's a huge part of it. I'll leave it at that.
Yes, thank you very much. I see Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Roberts. Again, question, I apologize to say this to the two of you now in advance, but it's okay. It's okay. We'll focus on the questions because we can have a further discussion later. Councillor
Thank you. I
Zavitz.
do have a question
Thank you.
to you and thank you for today and certainly what you're doing. And, you're obviously a very well-organized special interest group. And, I guess my question to you would be, where are you right now? Where do you see, are you hopeful for some of the more recent, I don't know whether you'd call them olive branches or what you'd say, but where they're MAHC is saying, well, let's have some more meetings. We're gonna have some more discussion. We're gonna continue the dialogue. Are you hopeful that, I guess two parts, are you hopeful that will bear some fruit? And secondly, on your presentation, you were pretty nice to us. Thank you. And, I hope you, quite honestly, what a topic. I mean, you need to come and you need to tell us, hey, withdraw your local share, do this, do that. My point is, are you hopeful that the most recent dialogue is going to bear some fruit?
Okay, thank you.
So I attended personally one of the recent information sessions, and there's full-time PR people that are pressing their plan, promoting it. There is discussion. If you're asking me personally, well, our group, because I'm here representing the group, We're hopeful there will be some movement. Yes. It's a long discussion otherwise. We've been begging for information to make other informed decisions and understand why. And we get answers, but nothing we can work with.
Thank you.
If I might,
Supplemental? Yep.
supplemental, is that something that the township can help with through our mayor and through other, largesse, if you will, as one of the vital local share groups? Is that something we can help you with? Is that something you want to ask us to, is that what you're asking us to do?
Well, I think that was, yes, that was asked in getting involved and asking to slow down and to be part of the process. We can make demands for information. There's been different discussions around that. We try to talk to other people. There's hesitation for everybody at a political level to get involved. Sorry, not everybody. That's an overstatement. Let me correct that. So yeah, if I take that as an offer, we would love for this council to ask for more financial information and the breakdowns and how it all works. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Chairman, for you and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in sessions that happened. So if you did notice there was a lot of openness to dialogue, so I'll bring more up.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you. And through you, I just want to go back to Tony with a question. It comes from one of the answers you gave to someone else. Does your group see a distinction between ALC beds and ALC patients plugging up acute care beds?
Sure, there's definitely a correlation. We understand that. Again, we're kind of stuck in between the current model that there's not an answer to that question, the very question you brought up. It's a district problem. A district has a solution. I mean, that's all down the future. And none of that is represented in this current model. So again, it ties into what you said before. Do we want to build a big hospital, plug it full of ALC patients? No, we don't. That really is not part of this. The ALC definitely is a major part that can be addressed elsewhere. We're dealing with the plan that we have, and we have to respond to that with the resources we're given to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you very much. I was looking at your proposal. So you were saying 90 beds for Bracebridge and 50 for Huntsville, which is 140. And yet the province come up with 157 beds. So you're giving up 17 beds?
Hey, we're a little bit about compromise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, if it's as if it was stated it's $2 million a bed, is it cheaper to build 121 up in Huntsville than only 36 in Bracebridge? Or if it was split, say 82 in Bracebridge and 75 in Huntsville? And the reason for that is there's 56 beds up there now, add 19 up there and add 15 in Bracebridge. And that, like, if it's costing $2 million a bed, what's the difference if it's being built in Bracebridge or Huntsville? Can you answer that?
Well, so to clarify, those two numbers, the 200,000, the 2 million, were an off the cuff given by somebody from a district end of things. We would love to be able to interpret that information, but we need to know what it costs to build a bed, what it costs to build a group, the different services that are proposed. How does that work? We don't have the information enough to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. Supplemental?
Supplemental. Do you have the numbers of people in the area that would be using Bracebridge compared to the number in Huntsville?
They are available. I don't have them with me right now.
No, but I would say there'd be more in Bracebridge and Huntsville.
That would be correct.
And that taking Brooks Falls, taking Algonquin Park, as they say, but we have 36,000 people up here every weekend for the summer. So, using that from Port Carling into Bracebridge, is it not easier to get to Bracebridge than Huntsville?
I would think it would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for coming and delegating to us today. We know there's a lot of passion for this topic, shared probably by everybody in the district of Muskoka. So we really appreciate the work that you're doing. I just think it is important to note at this point, we are going to have a further discussion, I think, a bit later today. But, you know, this is something that's outside of our township's jurisdiction. And so similar to the groups, trying to stay within our boundaries or our lane. And the important thing to get specific information would be working with MAC, which is, it sounds like you're doing, and making sure we have all the accurate, because none of us sitting around this table have built a hospital.
Nor
or,
us.
or established a
us,
future healthcare system
Right.
for a district. So I do want to thank you, though. Thank you for coming today, and thank you for the good work you're doing.
Thank you for your time.
Take care. Moving on to item 8B, please. Welcome, Director Donaldson.
Morning, Chair Mazan. Good morning, committee. So before you use a council policy update related to accounts receivable, mainly focused on credit card payments. So over the past few years, in part due to the pandemic and in the closing of the office, the township has moved increasingly more towards non-cash and electronic forms of payment. And in fact, excuse me, in fact, we've been accepting credit card payments for some services for some time. For taxes, currently credit cards can be used for payment online through our website. And there is a surcharge that is applied when doing that transaction. And recently we've added building permits and planning applications as well, eligible for credit card payments with the same arrangement. However, in other areas such as swimming registrations and fire permits, credit cards can be used as well, but there is no surcharge on those transactions. So the township currently doesn't accept credit cards in person at the counter for any transactions. So in bringing this forward, the expanded payment alternatives will ensure consistency across the corporation, and the updated policy will permit the acceptance of credit card payments with a surcharge for all user fees and charges, and will allow in-person transactions as well as remote locations. So we'll have merchant terminals available at the arenas so that there can be services available there as well. The intent would be then to extend this potentially in 2025 to allow for tax payments by credit card with a surcharge should residents choose to pay that way. The added credit card payment option would not replace existing options for payments that do not incur surcharges, such as allowing bill payments through online banking, checks, and debit cards. However, the aim of the policy would be to reduce cash transactions and have a limit of $1,000 per day per transaction for any service. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. Is the 2.5% the actual user fee? Is that what are you proposing? Is it going to be 2.5? Is it going to be 3? Is it 2? At what point do we cover our costs? I guess that's my question.
Thank you. So through you, Chair. So the maximum allowed through the merchants is 2.4%. The credit card fee that's charged depends on the card being used. So higher reward cards have a higher fee. So the expectation is that the 2.4% would cover those costs, and we wouldn't have to absorb any of those credit card fees processed.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Bosenworth.
And through you, thank you. Just so to be clear, does that mean someone buying a hot dog or a hamburger or doing something at our arenas would be paying a service charge? Is that what we're suggesting?
So through you, Chair, if they're using a credit card. So if they're tapping a debit card, there's no charge for that. So it would only be for credit card transactions only.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that committee approve the updated policy CFS-12 accounts receivable as attached as Appendix 1 to report FIN-2024-009. Are there any comments, discussion? Councillor Bosenworth.
Thank you, and through you. It does seem a little nickel and dime-ish to be charging for small transactions a fee. And it would somewhat, it sounds, it sort of distinguishes it in the marketplace as being a little cheap. Because I don't think most vendors do not charge. Some do. Some of them have a minimum, say you know, if you want to put it on your credit card, it's got to be a fairly large number. But it just, you know, it sets an odd image for us or as a corporation to be being a little cheap. You know, some people come in here with that use our facilities. You know, that extra fee might be a little bit of a challenge for them, bringing their kids for skating and things. It makes us look a little uncompetitive, and I was just wondering if there's anybody else around the table who felt the same way.
So I see a few heads nodding, and maybe I could just ask the question to Director Donaldson. The extra percentage is actually the credit card company's fee, correct? So it becomes meaningful when you scale things up to smaller organizations. Was contemplation ever given to understanding that, you know, for large transactions, this is something that makes sense? Otherwise, the credit card companies are the one that are making the money. Is that correct?
So through your chair, so the fee, the surcharge is to cover the credit card fee for the transaction. Right. There are alternative options available. So if people don't want to pay a surcharge, they can still pay cash, they can still pay a debit card, they can still use, it's only for those who choose to use a credit card for a transaction. I just want to be clear as well. So we don't operate the canteens necessarily in the arenas. So it would be for skating time. If somebody's coming in for skating time, if they want to tap their card, that charge would apply. But and I don't believe there's a way, and I don't know this for certain, I'd have to go back and research it more, but I don't think there's a way that we can kind of set thresholds where you don't charge here, but you do charge there. It's like if it's a credit card transaction, there's a surcharge applied.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Burry, no? Councillor Edwards?
Could we have something as Councillor Bosworth said, where say anything over $100, we put the charge on. So a family comes in and they pay $5 for skating on a credit card, that they're not charged the surcharge. We don't want to, and that we've eaten this for years now. So I mean, why would we start that? I think it is sort of nickel and diming.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understood then. I think that there isn't a mechanism. I think that's what you just said, Director Donaldson. I just would like to clarify again.
Through your chair. So I'm not aware that there is a mechanism that can separate transactions for whether that surcharge applies or not based on the amount. I would also say that we don't accept credit cards for any in-person transactions currently. So currently we don't accept credit cards at the arenas or anything, right? There's not even a payment option at this point. So it's just a question of being able to expand that if somebody chooses to use that as an option, it would then be available to them, but there is a cost that would then cover that charge so that the general tax base doesn't have to cover it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burry.
Thank you. Through you. So if we do offer credit cards at the arenas, I think that's great. That's a customer service. It is a personal choice whether you use a credit card or a debit card. All we have to do is make sure that people know that we're not going to subsidize credit cards for one person with another person. So that if you choose to use a credit card, you pay a fee. If you choose to use a debit card, there is no fee. It's pretty simple. It's just like the rest of the world.
I would agree. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Caught myself. Are there any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10A, please. Mr. Cox.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of committee. My first report this morning regards the potential designation of an additional community improvement project area for the Muskoka Lakes Community Improvement Plan. as well as the results of the review of the existing project area boundaries. As committee will recall, earlier this year, staff were directed to both begin the process of expanding the availability of the attainable and employee housing incentive stream across the township, as well as to review the program boundaries for the other incentive programs. So the main purpose of the background report that you have in front of you is to lay out the justification for designating an additional community improvement project area specifically for the attainable and employee housing program. If committee confirms this direction, staff are proposing to expand the program to cover the entirety of both the urban center and community designations in the official plan, as well as any properties that currently permit staff quarters as of right. If committee opts to proceed with this expansion, the CIP itself will need to be amended to include details on affordability criteria, housing standards, and other policy details that are necessary to support the revised program. As outlined in my report, staff are proposing to retain the services of the planning partnership who prepared the original community improvement plan to complete the necessary policy amendments to the CIP. Also, as noted in my report, after review, staff are not recommending an expansion to the boundaries of the other program areas, as the initial justifications for those boundaries have not changed since the program's adoption. However, if council wishes to proceed with one of the alternative options outlined in the report, the work to amend the boundaries will be rolled into the proposed work that would be conducted by the planning partnership. That concludes my remarks on this report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. So questions, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you, James, thanks for the report. Very good, very insightful. I do want to though clarify as it relates to Bala. And, I think I've been harping on this since CIP was brought into play in this room. I was only ever asking there's 3 businesses beyond the sports park in Bala. One is a golf course, driving range and storage area, which is known to everyone. Across the road is a huge garden center, and just up the road is a wood, it doesn't matter, Moon River Road. There's 3 businesses. And, I'm fine with everything else you're proposing, but I wanted to state for the record that there were only ever 3 businesses as it related to my reference for Bala in terms of expanding if you will, the border. It wasn't to go to 6 miles this way and 20 miles that way. It was only ever, and yet staff continues to come back and say, there's no need to change the border. I just want to be very clear that there's 3 businesses that have continued to bother me about it because I think we missed it. It was a misstep. I've said that before. I'll say it again. For the record, I think there's 3 businesses that we should be adding to this, and that's all. No, that's my thought. Thank you.
Okay, so the question was?
Can we?
Well, through you, Madam Chair, certainly as outlined in the report, there are other options available to council if they wish to make changes to those boundaries. Certainly, there are businesses that are outside the area in Bala, and there are also businesses that are outside of the designated area in Port Carling as well that are not currently eligible for the community improvement plan grants, partially as a result of its initial focus on the downtown areas. So if council wishes to pursue any other options, that is, of course, their prerogative.
Okay, thank you. Supplemental?
Supplemental, thank you. And through you to James, it's it's like literally the next property, right? It's literally the next property and it's literally across the street. So it does seem like we've misstepped here. And so to that end, I just would, again, reinforce it to the other councillors. This isn't, miles and miles. This is abutting. It's like right there. And it's been missed. In my mind, it's been missed. Thank you.
To James, through the chair. Are those properties on sewer and water? Because I think I did see something where a lot of these properties are on sewer and water.
Through you, Madam Chair, I will look to Director Pink to verify I have my information correct on this. My understanding is that the initial boundaries of the community improvement plan were set to roughly conform to the serviced areas of Bala and Port Carling. Now, my understanding is that they do not perhaps exactly conform to those boundaries. So I will perhaps look to my colleagues to confirm where exactly those boundaries lie.
Okay, thank you. Director Pink?
Thank you. Through you. My understanding is the water and sewer services end at the Bala Sports Park, which is the northern terminus of the community improvement plan area in Bala. And just further to the comment, certainly as Mr. Cox I think correctly pointed out, if council wishes to include additional properties, that's certainly your prerogative. I think it would just clarify that it was chosen for a reason, and the boundary is the serviced area. It's also the community commercial core. The zoning changes to a highway commercial core outside. And as much as it may just be 3 additional properties, there will always be then an additional property. So it is a question of drawing a line, and staff's advising you that that line was chosen for those reasons. Should it wish to be altered, that certainly can be done. But be prepared that there will then be in Port Carling and Bala potentially other properties or other communities that may request the same sort of leniency and flexibility.
Thank you. I will go to Councillor Bosworth and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Zavitz. Councillor.
Chair, if I may make a suggestion, perhaps we could read the resolution.
I just want to make sure there's no other questions and I'm happy to do that. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you. And through you, James, I have a quick question. I want to understand better what the Attainable and Employee Housing Program accomplishes in terms of attainable housing unrelated to staff housing. Is there actually funds available to develop attainable housing for just pure residential purposes, unrelated to a business, unrelated to that sort of thing?
Through you, Madam Chair. So as the CIP is written currently, it does provide financial incentive support for the development of attainable housing to the extent of a construction grant of 25% of eligible costs up to a maximum of 40,000. There's also options for tax increment grants and fee waivers. Neither one of those options has been requested or put into place since the program was adopted. One of the reasons that we are proposing to do the amendment to the community improvement plan itself is to provide greater policy guidance around what qualifies as attainable housing, what limits there are around affordability, what standards the township would expect those residences to be developed for and used for if the proponent and the owner is going to access this sort of support. So certainly the intention would be to provide greater policy detail around our support for attainable housing and also consolidate the existing support programs that we have for attainable housing into one place, and to the extent possible align that with the work that the District of Muskoka is doing on attainable housing as well.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I would, if I could ask one question, and it relates to the actual staff quarters as part of a tourist resort or private camp portion, and just want to make sure, perhaps even for my own comfort, it seems to me that there will be an ongoing process as we refine exactly how that happens to ensure protection that the housing that's being built is being used for that effect. I just want confidence that there is an ongoing process happening here.
Yes, Madam Chair, that is correct. That is the intention of doing the amendment to the community improvement plan. As the plan's written right now, certainly when it was adopted, its initial focus was on downtown revitalization. The attainable housing component was added as it had a clear economic development impact, and it was something that we wish to pursue. However, there has been quite a lot of work that has been done on specifically having support programs for attainable housing through community improvement plans since that time. And if this is a program that we're looking to expand, I think it's in the township's best interest to have that sort of policy guidance in place.
Thank you. And if I could just ask one more question on that. Groups such as a golf course that hire quite a bit of staff, I've just been approached historically. Would that be included in a tourist resort or a private camp, or is there another designation?
I will perhaps look to Director Pink to provide the planning details around that.
Thank you. Through you. It was not included. Golf courses are actually subject to a different zone, typically open space OS3, and staff quarters is not currently permitted use in the zoning bylaw for golf courses. So what could occur through the update to the zoning bylaw, that could certainly be considered to change, and then future amendments to the community improvement plan. But at this time, we're suggesting just those zoning categories that permit staff quarters as a permitted accessory use would be eligible.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, I will read the resolution and then we can have a conversation. Is that moved by Councillor Burry? Oh, a question. I apologize. Councillor Edwards.
I'm just looking at the Port Carling map here, and if you could help me, James. Is the curling club included? It looks like it's excluded. Is Morley's included? It looks like it's excluded. So again, like coming up, are we either going to add all these other ones, or are we just going to keep it like it was potentially laid out?
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Certainly the way that the boundaries were set originally was, again, focusing on that core commercial area with additional elements added in either through to ensure that there were township owned spaces like Canna Park, for example, that were added in for the purpose of being able to put public realm enhancements there. Or if there were plots of land that had high redevelopment potential that had been identified. So if you look at the areas around Bruce Wilson Drive that have been included, those areas were, I believe, were included for those reasons. Certainly, as has been said, and as Director Pink noted, we can, council certainly has the option to designate additional properties if they so wish. Staff would caution that any sort of expansion of the boundaries should be done through consistent criteria. So that we can expand those boundaries, but we need to have a clear and consistent reason to do so.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that committee approve the development of an amended community improvement plan as per details in staff report CED 2024-013, and that relief from the procurement bylaw 2004-161 be granted to sole source consulting services of the planning partnership to complete the community improvement plan CIP revisions. Are there any comments, discussions? Okay, seeing none. You got it right before I called the question. That's great. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And again, it's more of a statement, but again, the properties that I'm talking about in Bala are 50 kilometers in front of both businesses. It's, you know, the speed limit denotes as well that you're in town, and the 80 is way down there. So my point is, perhaps there should be or could be a reconsideration or some sort of a method where we could consider. I don't even know if these businesses would want to participate in the CIP. My point though is that I think as that governing body are responsible for isolating the opportunity. I think we could do better.
Okay.
Is my point. Thank you.
Thank you. No other, Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, and maybe I'm just not learning very quickly today, but I'm still back on the attainable housing thing. If we had an employer somewhere in the region who was undergoing an expansion and needed attainable housing, would they have to be located in that region in order to qualify for the attainable housing grant? Or could, for instance, a hospital in a neighboring municipality that's looking to put 50 new staff members somewhere, could they come to us and ask for support building remote staff housing opportunities on if they were built on an attainable housing basis?
Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So as of right now, certainly there is no requirement in the community improvement plan that employer who was constructing staff housing needed to be located in the township. And certainly I don't believe the intent would be to add such a restriction in. The intent of the Attainable and Employee Housing Program, as stated in the community improvement plan right now, is to increase the availability of housing stock in the community. And so in terms of whether that's, that's a local landowner who's looking to develop attainable housing, or a business that's located either here or in one of the adjoining municipalities, they, if they're pursuing a development that increases that supply of housing, that would be something that would be eligible for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Supplemental.
Just a quick supplemental. I thank you for that answer. And I think it's great news. I think this program suffers for lack of marketing. Maybe we need to get the word. If you get the word out, this will be oversubscribed. That's great news. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ken.
Thank you, and through you. Just one point that came up in one of our prior meetings was the fact that there was somebody, I'm trying to remember, it was in Bala, who was building 2 units, and they were calling them affordable housing. And one of the items that we at that time noted was the fact that how do you ensure that once we give money to somebody, whether we approve it or we continue, that something remains a affordable, by definition, unit? And we don't have any parameters on that. And I was just suggesting that's something that we need to set out, because I think asking for money, taking it, and these amounts are not so large, but we made that case on that large development of 2 properties that were going to have rent within a certain range. But we have to set some parameters about what we mean by affordable and how we tie people to that commitment that they've made, if we've supported them on that basis.
So through you, Madam Chair. So for previous applications that have been received and approved under this attainable housing stream, what staff have done is we have worked to essentially mirror the progress that the District of Muskoka uses for the grants that it provides for attainable housing. So there are stipulations in that agreement that set out an affordability period, usually of 5 years, during which time the owner commits to charging essentially market rents, which are defined in the agreement based on data from the regional data from the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation and some other sources as well. So what we would be looking to do under this work is to essentially codify that process actually into the community improvement plan, because if we're expanding this area, presumably there will be more interest in this program, and we want to actually have those guidelines formalized.
Thank you. Mayor Kelly.
And thank you. And through you, just to take that a little bit more current, there's a lot of work being done by the Housing Task Force at District on this very issue. There's also some developments, I think, from CMHC in terms of what constitutes attainable, what constitutes affordable. The biggest challenge is one of enforcement. You've hit the nail on the head, and there's really only 2 mechanisms that are kind of accessible and enforceable. One is to maintain it in social housing as sort of publicly owned, purpose-built rental, where the community or the owner, the owner is the township or the municipality or the district, and they maintain rents subject to escalation tied to some modest amount like COLA. The other one is to, if it's a deeded sale, or if it's somebody purchases it, is you register the municipality on title, so that in order for it to be sold, the municipality has to sign off on the sale, and they verify that it actually is being sold on the terms that it was originally built under.
Thank you. Councillor Bosemore.
Thank you. And through you, just more a comment than anything. Quite sympathetic to Councillor Zavit's concern about missing 2 or 3 businesses. But I also think that we can't do things without a solid criteria. And if you were going to do that, you would probably have to expand the Port Carling one almost out to Muskoka Road 7, because we have businesses all along 118 you know, the line just goes, I think it's between the veterinarian is outside, on the other side is inside, but if you go all along 118, almost, well, all the way to Muskoka Road 7 is all commercial. And even past, just past. And that's a very large area. So I think if we had any decision or discuss that point, we would be looking at a fairly significant expansion of the area, which, you know, I think is probably outside the idea of what we had to do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have read the question. I will now call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, that carries. Committee, it is now just after 10. We only have a few items left, so I'm going to suggest we take our break now, and then I think we'll be able to finish off our agenda. We have a few more items. So if we could come back at 10:20, please. Okay, welcome back. At this point, we are going to move on to item 10B. Mr. Cox.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of committee. So my second report this morning regards the renewal of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Township and the Muskoka Lakes Museum. As per the Township's grants policy, an MOU is a requirement for an organization to be considered for an annual operating grant. The existing MOU with the museum was signed in the year 2021 and lasts until the end of this year. So Township staff have met with representatives of the museum, and both parties feel that the existing arrangement has worked well over the past 3 years. As a result, staff are recommending that the existing MOU be renewed for an additional 4-year term with some minor changes to reflect current operating practices. A full summary of the changes and the proposed new MOU can be found in Appendix 1 of my report. And that concludes my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have or committee may have at this time.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Councillor Bosemore.
Thank you. Through you, just to be clear, so the museum board would be completely happy with the changes we've proposed.
Thank you.
Yes, we've submitted the draft MOU to the museum for review, and they've indicated that they are satisfied with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the Memorandum of Understanding MOU with the Muskoka Lakes Museum be renewed for an additional 4-year term, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign a Memorandum of Understanding with the Muskoka Lakes Museum in the form attached as Appendix 1 to Report CED-2024-014. Are there any further comments? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, I suppose a rather naive question. Given that we're going to join hands again for the next 4 years, given this passes today, is there an allowance within our fiscal scenario where, you know, every year, 40,000, 42,000, 45,000, can it be a set amount of $40,000 for the next 4 years? And can we imprint that somewhere so that there, you know, as it relates to, oh, well, we need more money next year, whatever. I'm wondering if there's a way to do that,
Okay.
or if there's an appetite.
Through you, Madam Chair. So as the municipal grants policy is currently written, there is the process that recipients of operating grants go through, and at this point it's just the Muskoka Lakes Museum and the Muskoka Lakes Chamber of Commerce, is that they submit an annual request through the regular budget process for council's consideration, reflective of their needs over the anticipated year. Now, certainly with the history with the agreement with the museum, the ask has been fairly consistent. In the past, other operating grants have tended to vary pretty widely based on current conditions. For example, during the pandemic, when there were additional stresses on organizations, things like that. So it can be difficult to predict as to what the annual needs of our organizations would be, and so that's not how the grants policy is composed right now.
Okay, thank you. I did read this, correct? Okay. There's no other comments? Sorry. I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. If somebody could let Councillor Burry, thank you. No, he can come back in. And just while we wait, I did want to note that we received notice that Councillor Nishikawa has sent her regrets. So I just wanted to make sure I made that known to the rest of the committee. Welcome back, Mr. Burry. Thank you. Now we will move on to item 10C.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and members of committee. My third and final report this morning regards the first intake of the 2024 Community Improvement Plan Private Sector Incentive Program. Applications for this intake were received between April 6th and May 31st of this year. During this time, 9 complete applications were received, the details of which, along with staff's recommendations for approval, are found in the appendices of this report. This concludes my remarks, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that committee may have at this time.
Thank you. Committee questions. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you to James. So the two, I mean, it's great and people are starting to come forward and put their hand up, and this is wonderful for our community. The two that we've denied, or the two that are recommended to be denied, it just seems like almost a paltry sort of scenario where, you know, clean, repaint. I mean, that's, you know, we had a business, we took over a store in Bala. We simply painted it, and we got so many comments from people, you know, it cleans up the community. Are these being denied? Are the two being denied because of incomplete paperwork, the way they submitted? Or do we just, their proposals to minimum? Or I wonder if you could explain that. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, the community improvement plan policy for each grant stream states that there is a minimum budget required for work to be approved, so that a project has to be of a certain size in order to qualify. And the reason that that restriction was put in the policy was to ensure that any projects that are being approved are of a significant scale to make a tangible contribution to improving, beautifying the downtown core, improving the quality of the buildings, those sorts of things. And so those are the reasons for staff's recommendation, in that the application does not comply with the policy on that criteria. Certainly all of the other criteria that are identified in the policy were met by both applications, and you know, they are I think good projects, and they would benefit the community, but they don't meet the minimum requirements that were outlined in the policy as approved by council. So that is the reason for staff's recommendation. And again, these are recommendations, and as noted in the report, staff has, or committee has the discretion to make exceptions to that if they so wish.
Supplemental, if
Yeah.
I might. Thank you. So given that, would we have gone back to these two people who we've denied and let them know that had they asked for, I don't know, so the minimum, if $2,125 isn't enough for clean and repaint of an exterior surface, what is? If they'd said 4,000, would we have approved it?
So through you, Madam Chair, the minimum project budget for the business accessibility and facade upgrade stream is a $10,000 budget. So you would have a minimum ask of the grant of $5,000. So that would be the level at which the project would have to pass to be eligible. Certainly when we have pre-consultations with applicants, we advise them of this and of the criteria, and some people that we've spoken to have opted to withdraw applications or make changes to applications, but not all.
I saw Director Pink, you had your hand up, and then I'll come to you. It's okay.
Thank you. Through you, I just also wanted to clarify that part of the application requirements laid out in policy is the submission of 2 quotes. So it's not just a question of providing us an amount that meets our criteria. I think the intent of setting the minimum is to ensure that there's some substantial completion or a substantial project being completed to justify the grant issuance, not solely just cleaning up one's property. So the quote process ensures that it's a reputable amount.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kent?
Thank you. And through you, I mentioned to James in the hallway just a few minutes earlier was that what I noticed about the list of applications is there were a bunch of smaller projects, all for painting, fascia, siding, blah, blah, blah. Could we not facilitate the community and the CIP people in town by bundling them together and hiring one painter? First of all, the dollar value goes up. It would be helpful, and it would let some of the smaller dollar people get their work done. Anyway, just an item that would address this problem of small work falling under the radar screen. And I'd like to, I mean, it'd be nice if everybody wanted to paint their frontages and make it look a little nicer. Great.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if that was a bit of a question, so.
So through you, Madam Chair. So again, through the pre-consultation process with property owners, we always encourage them to, we always come at those pre-consultations with a mindset to trying to help them make their application work. So we'll work through them on that process in order to find an eligible solution if that is at all possible. I will note that the community improvement plan itself, specifically with regard to the ecological spaces grant, does include provisions for adjoining property owners to collaborate on projects.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Zavitz?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure about the township getting into the painting business, but I can say if you've had any work done lately or tried to, it's impossible to get two quotes. And I'm hearing that from a lot of people. I experienced it myself. Perhaps we could, as a group, agree that one quote, I mean, it's really difficult to get it up here, to get two people to come out. And if that's the criteria for the CIP, it's kind of difficult for people to accommodate.
Okay, I will take that comment just because that's not in front of us right now is updating or amending the policy, but so let's talk about this and then I can, a question? Okay, yes, okay.
Could do. What you could do is you could send them back and say, why don't you 10 property owners get together and come forward with a proposal that includes, $1,000 or $2,000 of painting on 10 different properties all in the same area and get it done in one bulk, and it would look bigger to us, and it would be one project under one bid, which would attract more interest from the painters, et cetera. Anyway, just an idea. Rather than us getting into the painting business, as Councillor Zavitz suggested, send them back to organize themselves. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Nishika, Councillor Zavitz. Seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that the Community Improvement Plan CIP Private Sector Incentive Program funding recommendations outlined in Appendix 2 of Staff Report CED 2024-005 be approved, and that the Director of Development Services and Environmental Sustainability be authorized to complete each financial services agreement on behalf of the township. Are there any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. We are now on to a new business, 12A. And that gives us an opportunity to go back to earlier this morning when we were discussing the hospital proposals with MAC and the delegation from this morning. And I thought what I would do, I think we did have an opportunity to discuss a little bit more than we typically do during a delegation, but I would like us to have that opportunity today if anybody would like to. I think in order to set the table, I'll go back to the comments I made that as a township, this is outside of our jurisdiction, right? We have this MAC board from the province that is managing this process, and we have stakeholder groups in our community who are trying to be representing some questioning and oversight, I guess, to this initiative. It's clearly something that we are all interested in and impacted by. And I think it's important that we understand how to participate most effectively as the township. And so perhaps just before I open up the conversation to the broader group, I will ask Mayor Kelly just to perhaps, he's the person who's closest to this topic right now, perhaps help shape any discussion.
Thank you for that. And through you, I kind of hardly know where to begin on this. I guess the hard question here is not how do we help or what can we do or, what should we do? The question really is what can we do? There's a big concern that at the level we're at, where we haven't popped up in any way on the local share, that we really haven't had any involvement, to my knowledge, other than as citizens. And I can tell you that on behalf of the township, we've obviously had a very close relationship, as close as we can make, with all of the moving parts that are involved in this discussion. Primarily, through the MAC board, and that was a lot more intense at one point in early on than it has been more recently. I can tell you that I, along with a couple of other South Muskoka mayors and our respective CAOs, have met several times, 3 or 4 or 5 times, with the group of 43 or 47 doctors to try to better understand their issues and their concerns. And I didn't convene, but I guess I was actually the host of the only meeting that the Save South Muskoka Hospital Committee had here in the township of Muskoka Lakes. And I made it clear right up front that I had really nothing to say, but a lot to learn, and participated in it. It was at the community center across the road 4 or 5 months ago, I guess. I don't remember. So I think we've had a finger in every sort of pie that we can find, and more of it is to try to facilitate or convene the right answer rather than to play a particular role. Our responsibility, the decision really at the municipal level, let's start at the top. The decision on this hospital ultimately resides with the Minister of Health. And it has been the Minister of Health that has worked with MAC, the board, to come to essentially come to approve the plan as it was originally presented. And I suspect there's been ongoing discussions, and Maureen, you can agree with a nod of the head, between MAC board and Minister of Health as this thing has evolved. So, you know, when you get to the minister's level, it's literally, there is no transparency. It's a decision to be made by the cabinet at the provincial government level. The consultation is really, I think, to make sure that everybody who has a vested interest understands the proposal, has had a lot of opportunity for feedback. The requests, the only real requests, and I think there were 3 or 4 of them in the delegation material that we got in advance of this meeting. And I don't know if I have it. I do have it with me, but I can't remember the page it's on. The 4 requests were basically make sure that it's there for us now. That's the wrong page. They're looking for us to essentially stand up on behalf of the residents of South Muskoka to make sure that the hospital is designed in our best interests. I understand that. And certainly I think we're doing everything we can to facilitate the right decision. If we ever get the Minister of Health, MAC, the group of doctors currently practicing and some retired from the Bracebridge Hospital, all on the same page, I think we've accomplished that goal. I actually think we're much closer than I heard today. I don't think we're closed on it. There is also a recent round of much more intimate information gathering sessions that have been made available, I think, just in the last week. I think they're fairly close scheduled. I think there's 3 or 4 a day. I know there was one on Saturday. I know a couple of people here in this room were at those meetings. I think the messaging that's coming from that is a lot tighter. It's a lot easier to deal with people in smaller groups and share the details and have people walk away saying things like, well, it's a lot better than I thought it was, which is literally what I'm hearing. So I think it's moving in the right direction. One of the other requests that came from Safe South Muskoka Hospital was asked to make sure that we have more time and enough time. And I know that the original stress back in January was that the answer was needed immediately. And I understand it's been pushed back. I don't know how far back, but I suspect it's a long way back. I think it's perhaps till this fall. I think there's been good use made of the time in the intervening, time span to bring the plan that's a plan that addresses some of the issues that have been raised by the various groups. So I'm comfortable that as a township, we are well represented at the table, whether it's at MAC, whether it's at Safe South Muskoka Hospital, whether it's with the physicians who have initially raised and continue to fight hard for a different model. I see progress. I think our CAO, who's been with me through most of this stuff, I won't put words in his mouth. I'll let him speak for himself, but I hope he sees progress. Where I was going with my question, and the reason I wanted that question on the table is because where I don't see progress is alleviating the 2 big stress points. that I think are inappropriately being linked to the new hospital. One is an abundance of ALC patients, and everybody who goes through the hospital becomes an ALC patient at some point. The question is, are there adequate provisions to move them into respite care, into rehab care, into back home, or into long-term care available in the community, or do they linger far too long in the hospital, tying up, as was said earlier, the most expensive real estate in this township or in this district? I don't think we have adequate long-term care. I don't think we have adequate rehab resources. And I think that when we confusingly say, well, there's a lot of beds dedicated to ALC, I think that's because there's no alternative. There's no suitable alternative to move them out more crisply into better levels of care, given the situation that they're under at the time. Or there's no incentive. And I can see Councillor Burry's expression. There is either no availability of care or there's no incentive to move people to the care that is available. So that needs to be addressed. But the way I understand it, unless I'm way off base, addressing that with a better model or more facility is not MAHC's responsibility. It's the responsibility of someone else. Whether it's the Minister of Health, whether it's the district, it's someone else. Similarly, I hear these sort of horror stories about wait times in the emerge, and that is a trend I can speak personally exists in every part of this province. I have had family members complain about lingering too long in Mississauga and up further north from here. That's a problem. The problem is there's not enough care in the community, whether it's nurse physicians, whether it's frontline family physicians. That needs to be addressed as aggressively and confidently as we can. And quite frankly, we've been working on that simultaneously without a whole lot of forward progress. It's a challenge to find people to take that frontline care and deal with it in the community in the form of a walk-in clinic or a full-time family physician or a nurse practitioner, and get it dealt with before it has to wind up in emerge, tying up very valuable emergency resources for, I'm going to guess, some fairly non-emergent issues, non-emergency type issues. So a lot of what's being laid at the feet of MAHC, I think, is misdirected. I think that energy needs to be redirected to whoever can help us recruit and retain more physicians, more nurse practitioners, open more walk-in clinics, and move people more crisply and efficiently out of hospital beds once they're post-acute into long-term care, rehab medicine, or back to a home, back to their own personal houses, maybe retrofitted to be able to accommodate their needs. I don't know, but those are issues that need resolution. Those are issues that I don't think is the responsibility of MAHC. I think the mistake is to overbuild a hospital to accommodate for those inefficiencies and pay absolutely through the nose for the most expensive real estate in the province to house problems that are better solved somewhere else and less expensively somewhere else. So I'm at a loss as to where we go from here. The only obvious opportunity might be to go back and discuss at district the commitment we made on local share. I can tell you, I think of the 20 some odd people that voted on that, there were only 2 voted against the current local share commitment. And those 2 voted for different reasons. And those 2 were both in the room. I don't think it's a winner. I don't think it's going to carry. I think we'd be wasting our time. I'd much rather focus our energy on things that I think have a reasonable prospect to resolution, which is why we've been meeting, lunching, dining, trying everything we can to attract new full-time family physicians. Why James has been involved in that as well as part of economic development and energy for our township. I'd like to know how we can better, well, I do know we tried very hard to make more efficient the construction that's going on in Huntsville at the district's expense, the new Fairburn model, which frankly could accommodate more people for the same price, had it been designed differently. I was in Ottawa on Monday and we pitched 3 different things to 5 different cabinet ministers and deputy ministers. The one that I suspect will get funded quickly is an addition to Fairburn at federal government expense to add another room, which better leverages the infrastructure and the foundation work and takes the capacity up by 20% for less than a 20% increase in our costs, which is nice. But we're not going to win this one bed at a time or one. I mean, there needs to be a strategy and a plan in place that says we've got to focus on the delivery of medicine to this community on a much more broadly and a much more efficient and a much more appropriate basis. We need family physicians. We need walk-in clinics. We need nurse practitioners. We need efficiently run hospitals, one in Bracebridge, one in Huntsville. Although I will tell you, the longer this goes on, the louder the pushback I'm hearing from people in our community say we got to go back and revisit the one hospital model. I'm hearing it from the community. I'm not hearing it from anyone else. I think we've done what we can do. I don't see any reasonable prospect of influencing the outcome of this by going back to district and reopening discussion. I think that would be a fruitless waste of time. I think it would be disruptive. I think our focus and our energy needs to be redirected on ways to make the hospital currently on the deck 36 beds or perhaps 54 beds, the right size for this community, because we're not going to plug up the front end with non-emergency emergency patients, and we're not going to plug up the back end with non-acute acute care beds. So really a long answer. What was the question again? So
Thank you. Thank you. I think you're the person who is, as the head of council, probably most well suited to set the stage. As you were closing there, I actually opened up again their final, the final presentation slide that said that these are the things they want us as a council to continue to do. And it would seem, based upon everything that you're talking about, that we are doing that, or you are doing that, as a group of us are doing that, to try to get this right. Because the comment is strongly urge MAC to take the time and get this right. And I think what you've just said is there has been a lot of discussion happening. So.
And the time has been well extended. I mean, right from Sylvia Jones, Minister of Health, I think the commitment was take the time you need to get this right. I don't think that is, forever, but I certainly think it's through this fall. And I think there's been a lot of forward progress, and I think we're close.
Okay, thank you. I will now open up to others. Councillor Bosemerth.
Mayor Kelly, is there any thought of taking some of that $1 billion and using it for long-term care to kind of fix part of that problem?
There has really been no discussion around that. I don't think we can do that. I think it's essentially allocated to the build of the 2 hospitals and the different pocket, probably similar source responsible for the development. I mean, the development of long-term care can actually be a private matter as well. Private industry can do that. There's lots of privateers in that industry. Perhaps we revisit the way they get compensated to find out why they're not building where there's clearly a need. But I don't think any of that wallet dedicated to hospital can be rededicated to something like that.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, through you. I'm not sure if this is the same topic, and to you, Mayor, but I see on the there was a special meeting of the Health Services and Community and Planning Services Committee on Thursday, May 23rd. And in there in the agenda shows childcare, Fairhaven Early Learning and Childcare Center for some close to $6 million. I have never heard that discussed in amongst all the Fairburn words about, the seniors, et cetera. Is that something we'll talk about later?
Well, we can talk about this. I just want to try to close off this one item on the agenda, but we will be talking about the district, so we can kind of link these two back together, if that's okay. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, and I invite it. Thank you. Word. Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. And I echo everything Mayor Kelly had said. In that, there's not one thing I would question. I was one that attended the session on Saturday morning, well attended to the one I attended. And I came away with 2 or 3 points that I think I should share, because I know MAC is really trying to work with the public. These smaller sessions, they're getting the information in a more one-on-one environment, and I got value out of that. They have they're going to extend these sessions. I think there was 11 of them. They're going to have them ongoing. And they're willing, if asked, to come out to large groups of people and have the same type of dialogue. What I learned there, and I guess I'd heard it before, but it really hadn't sunk in, that the proposed model, the healthcare model that we're having for Muskoka is based on the Ontario healthcare model that is evolving from bed-centric care to a community-based care. And the proposed model that we have right now, we got it out of this session, we'll see 2 independent acute care hospitals, and their estimate is that 95% of the patients who will receive care at the hospital closest to them. And 95% is a big number. The proposed model attempts to avoid duplication. And they feel if they can avoid the duplication of services between the 2 hospitals, they'll be able to attract more professionals, because they'll have the volume of patients and care and the jobs will have, like the example was used last February about nurses who are delivering babies. We don't get a lot of babies delivered in Muskoka, but if we can get it all in one place, this is what they think will be cost savings and will attract people. What came out of there is that they suggest the best path forward, the MAC does, is to understand and question the proposed model. And based on, once you understand the proposed model and you question the proposed model, then all the costs and all the beds will fall out of that. So I encourage everyone to attend these sessions and learn. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't think there's a resolution in front of us. I think this has been a really good and healthy discussion. I do appreciate. Oh, Councillor Burry, I apologize.
Well, I mean, I could probably go on as long as the mayor, and I'm very passionate about this, and because of my past experience, actually understand a fair bit about how this hospital runs, and not a lot has changed. The issue I have with all sides is omitting information, obfuscating information. The group that came in front of us today, I hope I made the point about if they're trying to educate, they need to understand that alternate level of care is a massive problem for our hospitals. So the average stay in the province of Ontario for acute care is 3 days. And I can tell you that our hospitals are nowhere near that. And I won't divulge some confidential information I've been given as to the number of days, but it's big, way bigger than even I thought. Our hospitals aren't 20 or 25% alternate level of care beds. It's closer to 50%. And if you take the 50% of those beds and show they're obfuscated at 140% capacity, it brings you down to 80%, which is a really nice level for hospitals to be operating at. You know, kind of like management consultants. If you got 80%, you're doing pretty well. So the obfuscation of that is disturbing, because we're talking about building the most expensive beds in the healthcare system. And just because we can't get the groups in the same room to decide how we're going to deliver that doesn't mean that, oh, well, we'll throw up our hands and we'll build the most expensive beds in the system. And that's where we're at. And while I support the Save South Muskoka Hospital Group, I don't think they're being fair with the data. And I have a real problem with misinformation and obfuscation, and that doesn't matter what the topic is. You know, get me on roads. But the point is that I think we need to support them, but we need to support them in helping move our entire community in the right direction. We talked about moving obstetrics to one location 20 years ago. It's not new. You cannot, or it's highly unlikely to be able to get a nurse specialist that wants to deal with obstetrics to come to a hospital that has 90 births a year, with that number going down because our population growth is going down. So, you know, it's a huge problem. It's a complex problem. It involves multiple levels of government and multiple levels of private sector, frankly. You know, I don't know that the city of Toronto owns long-term care, but you know, we do at the district, and we don't run it very well. And I think that by any of the measures. So I think we need to get, you know, more into data. You've heard me talk about data before. Data will lead you to the right decision, and that we need to continue to press at those people that are saying, "Oh, I'm here to educate you," to make sure you've got your data right.
Thank you. So I am now going to move on from item 12A and move to our district updates. And I think just given Councillor Zavitz had asked a question on one of those agenda items, I believe, was it? On one of these agenda items, correct? The health service one. And I think it's Councillor Nishikawa who sits on that committee.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I don't know if any of the other district councillors are able to talk to that particular topic. You can, Councillor Edwards?
Yes, there was a motion and it was passed, and they're giving $5,566,805 for childcare in Fairburn. And the reasoning for some of this is that they figure, I think it's about 250 staff in there to get people and putting childcare in there for them so that they can go to work and look after the patients and that. If you looked at the drawings that they sent, and that this is where the problem begins with architecture. And I've said at the hospital, build it in a rectangle. There was one room there, there was 6 different angles. So that's changing walls and everything else that coming out in angles. We have got to start being realistic. And I have worked on hospitals. I worked on Mount Sinai Hospital. I was up at North Bay. It's the same thing. They built a mental health wing and closed the other one up on the hill. And they had less beds in the new one than they had in the old one, and sent people to Sudbury. So you can't say that we're doing, and this is why I'm listening to what people say. And that if you take 67 beds and move it down to 36, 37, and that, no wonder people are upset. And that we've got to start listening. And if you had to drive from Port Carling through Bracebridge and then up to Huntsville to visit someone at the hospital there, because, and that it should be more equal. And that if you take the beds and put 82 in, one and 75 in the other, would equalize it out. The group that was here, they said 140 beds. We're allowed 157, and that they will be used. And what they should be doing is refitting the old hospital to long-term care. So it's in the thing. But this is one of the things. But I see what the people are mad about. Because if I was in Port Carling, I had to drive through Bracebridge to get to Huntsville, I think I'd be upset and that. And this is what on the session I was at Saturday, people were saying. And that I talked to the one fellow afterwards. And he was saying, like, they're not listening. And that people are saying, you know, that's why there's was it the 23rd, there's a big outpouring there, and there's going to be a rally. But the whole thing is listen, and if we took over half our beds away and that from something here, people would be upset. That's why they're upset. And I think the hospital board has got to listen and that, and make it more equitable. But the reason, getting back to the other subject, to get staff. And that's why they're putting childcare in Fairburn. And that, but I think what we should be doing when we're laying stuff out is building it as a rectangle and not a monument to the architects. And that we could sure cut some of the costs.
Thank you.
But that's why that was there. I might as well finish my other.
Hold on for 2 seconds, please. We've shifted how we're doing
Okay,
this now, so we're
no,
allowing people to
went
ask
back-
questions.
I went back to the thing, to get people to work.
Right.
And that is to turn around. They're gonna have to start putting childcare in some of these places.
Okay, so
Because the people at the hospitals will be working 24/7 as well. And that, not the same people, but you know, when you look at the amount of shifts. And that, so this is why the district went with this, because they were allocated so many units for that.
So I think the childcare piece, I just, and I don't know if Mayor Kelly, you wanted to add anything further to that, but as far as childcare, part of the strategy as well to ensure healthy, vibrant communities, to ensure that there's healthcare. And it sounds to me, I'm putting myself out there, but perhaps add in that this was an addition to the Fairburn complex as far as a recruiting strategy to the staff. Is that, and that's been through all the committees, is that, or is this an early days discussion?
No, I think that's absolutely correct. And I think it's something we can expect to see in all sorts of new construction, whether they commercial construction, whether they be privately built or built by government agencies. I mean, attracting and retaining talent is tough.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So Councillor Zavitz, hopefully that gives you a bit more background on that particular topic. We started this last month, which was the agendas are attached from last month's district meetings. And I want that, at this point, similar to what Councillor Zavitz just did, there was an item he had a question on. Are there any other questions from committee on items on the district agendas? Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you. I did find it very informative, and I think I personally have been wondering for last term of council and again here now, you know, how much information and how we impart the information from our peers who go to district. I think it's great, and it gives it puts the information in front of us. If we don't do anything with it, then it's on us, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. I do actually have a couple of questions. Is that, but I want to make sure nobody else has questions for our district councilors yet. So this one was on the planning services. And underneath it, I noticed a couple of reports. I did not read the reports. So I will state that up front. But one of the talks to the streamlining of the planning functions. And then the second one is closure of inactive subdivision and condominium files. And they're just two reports. And I wasn't sure if there's anything in there that might be, who's planning? I'm sorry, is that you? Oh, Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Edwards.
Councillor Edwards. So on that, was there?
Okay,
Okay.
closing subdivision agreements. What's happened is they allocate so much water and sewer. And some of these things have been sitting for 10, 15, even some of them are even 20 years, and they're saying, hey, you're not gonna hog that. Somebody else has just come in, they're gonna build, so we're gonna give it to them, so they're closing the files. It's as simple as that. And they can reapply, but they're trying to get them to start moving on it, because
Right.
it's like Hannah's Landing. It's been sitting there for about 14 years now. And that, so if they were taking their allocation and hogging it, somebody else couldn't build if you were getting short on services. This is why it's being done.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one, the streamlining of planning functions. Is that something that
Pardon?
the streamlining of planning functions?
Well, they're working on it. It's something like the community planning service trying to get everything in, and that they are looking at a new system as well that they will be just investigating. It's still fairly new, so
So this is in early days, just.
yeah, it's in
okay.
very early days. Okay.
Thank you. I don't know if you. Okay, those were my two questions. Are there any other questions from committee? Now, I did see, Mayor Kelly, did you have a comment or question?
Simply, thank you, and through you, simply going to point out, if you want a good news story, if you take a look at the SALT story on engineering and public works, they're doing a lot of good work alongside people from the Watershed Council and the Friends of Muskoka Watershed to better use salt on roads to minimize calcium chloride runoff that comes from oversalting the road and polluting water. And there's tangible ways to measure it. And the good news story is even adjusted for the fact that it was a milder and shorter winter. The use of salt on the roads was already noticeably down, which is a good story.
That is a good story. Okay, so I will move off of item 12 and move, oh, no, that's not true. Community events. Oh, Councillor Roberts, I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to maybe to our new Director of Public Works. I'm wondering if we talked about the district doing this. We have kilometers and kilometers of roads. Are there plans to look at this report and build off it for our township?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the township currently does a salt reduction program. So we use a mix of salt and sand to reduce the amount of salt that we use. And we do have some roads that we do apply straight salt. So, staff monitor that with our application process, but we will be reviewing this for upcoming years for sure.
Did we? Oh, CAO Hammond.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And just further to Mr. Clucci's comments, Councillor Roberts, you may recall that one of the things that Council approved last year was the updating of automatic salt and sand spreaders in all of our vehicles. So we've now modernized the fleet to take a more judicious approach to application of those materials on our roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, I will now move on to 12C, which is our community events. We do have the calendar, but I did want to open up the floor if there's anybody who, Councillor Edwards.
Sorry, I don't know what's on there, but there's a Manette Tones concert on Saturday at 4 o'clock. And that, I don't know if it was on, it's at Peninsula Hall.
Thank you. Any other events to discuss? Oh, Councillor Edwards.
I was invited and everyone for the community events in Windermere, and I believe that's at 4 o'clock on the 13th tomorrow.
Thank you.
If anyone's interested, it's basically put on by the village of Windermere to see what people want for Windermere. Thank you.
I can see some questions, so I will do my best to represent that initiative. It started last year. There's a group of Windermere residents who have pulled the community together with a kind of a strategic planning process and community development engagement process, for lack of a better word. And I think this is year 2 of it, bringing back people and more stakeholders to specifically focusing on the health and vibrancy and long-term planning for the Windermere community. So that's tomorrow. If anybody is interested, I'm happy to also send it or Councillor Edwards, or I think Mayor Kelly and CAO Hammond.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And just so committee is aware, Mr. Cox will be representing municipal staff very capably. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cox. Okay, so seeing no other hands up, that's great. I think that allows us to adjourn. So I have a resolution here. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 11:10 a.m. And the next regular meeting at the General Finance Committee will be held on Wednesday, July 10th at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? Thank you. I guess we will resume back. That carries, sorry. We will resume back here in the chamber for 1 o'clock for our council meeting. Thank you.